Emily Noble vanished the morning after her 52nd birthday. Her car, phone, wallet, all still at home. 4 months later, her body was found hanging from a tree. The main suspect was her husband. The case seemed clear-cut until it wasn't.
Oh. All right, back out. Hey! Hey! Get them out of here. Set up crime scene tape. Yep. Yeah, lock it down. Lock this woods down for now. Make it as big as we can.
Use your left hand and unlock the door. Only your left hand. Put your hands back on your head. Do not move.
For 52-year-old Emily Noble, Westerville was home. It was a quiet suburban community just outside Columbus. Emily worked for the state of Ohio in a Medicaid office, a job she'd held for more than a decade. She was the household breadwinner with approximately $96,000 in personal assets. But money wasn't what defined her. Emily stood just 5 feet tall and weighed less than 100 pounds. She had osteopenia, a condition that made her bones more fragile than most. Those who knew her described her as feisty, free-spirited, courageous, always smiling. Emily had a special bond with her sister Amy Thomas. Their birthdays fell just 2 days apart, Emily's on the 24th of May, Amy's on the 26th. For one day each year, they were the same age, and they'd call each other and talk. It was their tradition, something that brought them close. Emily was passionate about nature, about foraging for edible plants in the woods near her home. Every morning, she posted sunrise photos on Facebook. She was known for taking long, solitary walks through her neighborhood. She loved the quiet, the space to think. But Emily's life hadn't been easy. Tragedy had followed her for decades. In the 1990s, she watched several friends die of AIDS. Her father suffered a life-altering accident. He slipped, fell, hit his head, and never recovered. Less than a year later, her mother died in a car crash. In 1983, Emily broke her nose in a fall, an injury that would become forensically significant years later. Then, in 2011, her first husband died by suicide. She inherited her mother's condo on Abbeycross Lane in Westerville, an 800-square-foot space that became her sanctuary. Emily had a history of depression. She sought professional counseling, but her friends emphasized one thing: she always overcame it. She always found the strength to carry on. After her first husband's death, Emily joined a dating site called Plenty of Fish. That's where she met Matthew Moore. He was living in Las Vegas at the time, working in the casino industry. They married in 2018. Moore relocated to Ohio with his teenage son Joey from a previous marriage. Moore's history was complicated. His ex-wife, Lisa Pedersen, would later testify about an incident on New Year's Day, 2001, 3 months into their marriage. She said Moore choked her whilst she was pregnant. She told the court he came over, and for some reason, he ended up putting his hands around her neck. It was the only time he put a hand on her, she said. They divorced in 2006. The couple had 2 children together. One of them died as a young child, the cause never publicly disclosed. Moore's mother died in 2018, and he placed the inheritance into a joint account with Emily. The combined balance was over $400,000. Then, in the summer of 2019, tragedy struck again. Moore's 17-year-old son Joey died by suicide, by hanging in a park not far from where the couple lived. It was devastating. Moore was described as a wreck. Emily's therapy notes showed her concern for Moore's well-being after his son's death, but there were no accusations of abuse. By May 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic had changed everything. Moore was unemployed. Emily was still working, still the breadwinner. There were tensions in the marriage. Text messages between them revealed disagreements about Moore's drinking, his sadness, name-calling. One message stood out. Emily said she was scared to go home. but Moore sent messages telling her to stay positive. When Moore asked her to tell him if she wanted a divorce, she never said she did. Friends noticed warning signs. Suzanne Kavanagh saw bruising on Emily's arm the last time they met in person. She raised concerns about the relationship, and their friendship deteriorated. As a result, Emily had also removed her wedding ring before she disappeared. Yet despite these signs, Emily appeared to be getting better. She was moving back to full-time work. She was, as always, overcoming. The 24th of May, 2020, Emily Noble's 52nd birthday. That morning, Emily and Matthew Moore travelled to the city of Bucktle to collect water at a local spring. They returned to Westerville, visited the Field of Heroes, and had a picnic in the park. COVID-19 restrictions had just been lifted, and bars were reopening. The couple decided to go bar hopping in downtown Westerville to celebrate. They stopped at Coble Grill restaurant, where they took selfies together. Bartender Jessica Selfridge served them around 7 p.m. They were her only customers. They stayed for about 45 minutes and told her they planned to continue their birthday celebration. They left around 7:30 p.m. Their neighbour John Kramer saw Emily at home sometime around 8 p.m. According to Moore, they returned home and went to sleep. He said he slept in the guest room to avoid disturbing Emily. User activity on Emily's phone ceased after 6 p.m. on the 24th of May. Moore had a 30-minute phone call with a friend just after 7:30 p.m. His phone showed constant user activity until 6 a.m. the following morning, the 25th of May, 2020. Moore claimed he slept until around 10 a.m. When he woke, Emily was gone. Left behind were her car parked in the driveway, her keys, her phone, her wallet, her credit cards, everything. At 2:47 p.m., Moore called Emily's friend Celeste Groan from Emily's phone, asking if she'd seen Emily. Then he filed a missing person report with Westerville Police Department officer Robert Hollis responded. His body camera recorded the entire interaction. Police conducted a walkthrough of the home. Both cars were present. There were no indications of foul play in the initial search. But Detective Steve Grubbs had what he described as an inner gut feeling. Something about Moore's account felt off. Within hours, hundreds of volunteers gathered at Westerville North High School. Multiple agencies joined the search. The FBI, state police, specialist K-9 units, dive teams, bloodhounds, and cadaver dogs were deployed at the condo, throughout the neighborhood along the western wood line. Dogs searched the main road near the condo and the bike path. A tip about a grave marker led to a search of the eastern wood line from the bike path. But there was a problem. A critical problem. The area where Emily's body would eventually be found was never searched. Police Chief Charles Chandler would later state in a news conference that the area had been searched 3 times. This was false. Moore's behaviour during the search struck many as odd. He posted missing person flyers around town. He claimed to have shown flyers at 2 Black Lives Matter rallies. But according to Emily's family, Moore refused to participate in any of the organised search events. He stopped cooperating with police. Then in September 2020, Moore pleaded with producers at the Vanished podcast to feature Emily's case. The episode aired that month, and the producers and listeners found Moore's interview very strange, very bizarre. When asked to describe Emily, Moore said he never saw her get on the scale, that she was very small, like 100 pounds. He described her as having pretty legs, great arms, very healthy arms and shoulders. He said she stood perfectly erect and was anatomically a really pretty lady. He mixed up dates, calling it Labor Day instead of Memorial Day weekend. He made odd comments about Emily's facial expressions. Podcast researcher Amanda Coleman would later say there were things Moore said to her that she had never heard in an interview before. The whole thing raised eyebrows. The 16th of September, 2020. A Wednesday afternoon. 3 local women were out searching on their own. They were foraging in a wooded area west of Emily and Moore's condo, off County Line Road, less than half a mile from home. It was an area where Emily often foraged for edible plants. Then they saw it. Skeletal remains in a kneeling position, suspended from a branch of a honeysuckle tree. A 20-inch black plastic USB cord was wrapped around the neck and tied to the branch. When the remains arrived at the Montgomery County Coroner's Office at 2:08 a.m. on the 17th of September, they weighed only 18 pounds. Deputy Coroner, Dr. Anna Castiglione Richmond, conducted an immediate evaluation under the supervision of Chief Deputy Coroner Lee Lehman. Photos and X-rays were taken. The remains were described as skeletonized with minimal mummified tissue. On the 22nd of September, dental records confirmed the body was Emily Noble. Police Chief Chandler called the case highly unusual. The scene itself told a story, though which story remained in question. A black water bottle lay next to Emily's left leg, containing a peachy-coloured liquid with 6% alcohol. Her engagement ring and wedding band were also next to her left leg. She'd removed them. Her right hand was clutching her right ankle. Her left arm was down, with her hand touching the water bottle. She was wearing black Old Navy leggings, a black spaghetti strap tank top, a white Old Navy long-sleeved shirt that had fallen around her waist, and trainers. An e-cigarette was in her leggings pocket. The USB cord and other items tested negative for DNA. On the 2nd of October, 2020, the remains were transported to Ohio State University. Dr. Amanda Agnew and a graduate student at the OSU Skeletal Biology Research Lab conducted further analysis. Their report, completed on the 11th of January, 2021, found 4 fractures to the hyoid bone, fractures to the nasal cavity, and some toe bones missing. A portion of the hyoid bone was also missing. The injuries were determined to be perimortem, occurring at or around the time of death, or post-mortem. 10 days later, Montgomery County Coroner determined the cause of death as multiple injuries to face and neck. But it wasn't until the 27th of May, 2021, that the case took a definitive turn. Dr. William Smock completed his report. Dr. Smock was a forensic physician and strangulation expert, and his conclusions became the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. He determined that Emily had been manually strangled. The quadruple throat fracture, he said, combined with the facial fractures from blunt force trauma, proved her death had been staged to look like suicidal hanging. It was clearly homicide. However, Dr. Smock was not a board-certified forensic pathologist. He was a forensic physician, an emergency medicine doctor who had completed a 1-year fellowship in clinical forensic medicine back in 1994. More significantly, Dr. Smock never examined Emily Noble's actual remains. He never visited the crime scene. He based his conclusions solely on reports and photographs. On the 16th of September, 2021, exactly 1 year after Emily's body was found, a death certificate was issued. Manner of death: homicide due to manual strangulation. Delaware County Coroner, Dr. Mark Hickman, a family practice doctor rather than a licensed pathologist, explained the delay. OSU had initially refused to sign off on the findings. He learned as elected coroner that he could initiate the certificate himself. Meanwhile, in March 2021, investigators had returned to the crime scene. They found bones that had been left behind during the initial sweep. This included Emily's molars, which investigators had thought were taken for DNA testing, but were actually still in the soil. The discovery revealed significant problems with the initial crime scene processing. The evidence against Matthew Moore was largely circumstantial, but prosecutors believed it was compelling. Phone records created a damning timeline. Emily's phone ceased all user activity at 6 p.m. on the 24th of May. Moore's phone showed constant activity until 6 a.m. the following morning. Analysis of Moore's phone data revealed something crucial. Whilst Moore claimed he'd been at a bus depot in Broadstone that morning, part of his job checking advertisements on the sides of buses, the phone data told a different story. At 9:25 a.m., Moore's phone pinged off a mast at Murphy's Quarry, less than a mile from the family home. The quarry could be seen from the property. CCTV cameras caught a car that appeared to be Moore's blue Fiat Maria passing the quarry at 9:59 a.m., driving away from the home. It was only after this that the phone was placed in Broadstone, where Moore said he'd been all morning Emily had left with the two boys to take them to the creche at 9 a.m. CCTV filmed her passing the quarry 3 minutes later. The same camera showed her coming back at 9:41 a.m. Investigators believed she was murdered shortly after arriving home. Police also discovered that Moore had moved items in the garage whilst officers were present during the initial missing person investigation. He moved an orange extension cord and a cooler. Leaving a flashlight next to both items, prosecutors suggested he'd used the flashlight to illuminate the wooded area during the nighttime staging of Emily's body. Moore's behaviour during the police interview raised red flags. He repeatedly referred to Emily in the past tense, saying, "I loved Emily," rather than, "I love Emily." He never physically searched the 800-square-foot condo. Instead, he used text messages and a mobile phone locator app. He mentioned suicide repeatedly during the interview, even speculating that if Emily was going to kill herself, she might hang herself. This was before her body had been found. Detective Grubbs acknowledged a dateline that they had no DNA or blood evidence linking Moore to Emily's death. No eyewitnesses. No physical evidence at all. But, he said, you would love to have the full confession, you'd love to have it on videotape. But what we have is Emily's body, and Emily's body is telling us the fact that we have a homicide. On the 17th of June, 2021, more than a year after Emily disappeared, a Delaware County grand jury returned an indictment. Matthew Moore was arrested the same day during a traffic stop by heavily armed Westerville police officers. Reporters surrounded him in handcuffs. Moore insisted they were making a mistake. "This is a mistake," he said. "I am innocent." He was charged with 2 counts of murder, felony murder and purposeful murder, and 1 count of felonious assault. He pleaded not guilty on all counts. Bond was set at $2.5 million. Moore would remain in Delaware County Jail until the trial's conclusion. The trial began on the 16th of August, 2022. Prosecutors Mark Sleeper and Melissa Schiffel faced defense attorney Diane Monash. The jury visited the couple's home and where Emily's body was found. Opening statements came on the 17th of August. The prosecution's case focused on Emily's resilience. Lead prosecutor Mark Sleeper told the jury about the terrible things that had happened in Emily's life, the friends lost to AIDS, the deaths of her parents, her first husband's suicide. "But what do you hear about that?" he asked. That each time Emily Noble overcame that tragedy, overcame that trauma, and continued on to see the joy in life, she got through it every single time. Then he pointed at Moore. Till she married that man. The prosecution's star witness was Dr. Bill Smock. He testified unequivocally. "As far as I'm concerned, Emily Noble's hyoid bone fracture did not come from her hanging. It came from strangulation. She was strangled manually and then placed in the tree." Dr. Amanda Agnew from OSU presented the skeletal analysis. On cross-examination, she admitted the right nasal cavity was not fractured and that a graduate student had partially written the report. Lisa Peterson, Moore's ex-wife, testified that Moore choked her whilst she was pregnant in 2001. "It was the only time," she said. The defense attacked the investigation's integrity. Crime scene evidence had been mishandled. Teeth and bones were left behind, only recovered months later. The area where the body was found had never actually been searched. Garbage in, garbage out, Monash argued. She emphasized the complete lack of physical evidence. No DNA, no blood, no direct evidence connecting Moore to the crime. This case is totally speculation, she said. The closing arguments revealed the prosecution's theory for the first time. They believed Moore had followed Emily during a walk on the night of the 24th of May, killed her in the wooded area after his 30-minute phone call around 7:30 p.m., then staged the crime scene during the 3-hour window after 9 p.m. when Emily's phone showed no activity. Moore showed visible agitation in the courtroom, throwing up his arms. When Monash brought up his son's suicide, Moore wiped away tears. At least one juror was seen crying. "The evidence is clear," Sleeper said in his closing. "It proves beyond a reasonable doubt that Emily Noble did not die of suicide." On the 26th of August, 2022, after deliberating for just under 3 hours, the jury returned with a verdict. Not guilty on all 3 counts. Moore held his face in his hands and sobbed. He cradled his face in his palms and repeatedly mouthed, "Thank you to the jury." After the acquittal, Moore told WBNS there was no closure with Emily and him and her death. The combination of being accused of murder, at the same time dealing with that, he said, "It's a pressure and a feeling that I can't describe. Right when I was found not guilty is when I started to be able to grieve her." He acknowledged the ongoing suspicion. "The people that think I'm guilty, there's nothing I'm going to say to change that," he said. "It's something you have to get used to. I guess it's not fun." He said he'd been wiped out financially by the arrest and trial and had to leave Westerville. In March 2023, Moore published a book titled Emily, A Staged Suicide in Ohio. In it, he maintains that Emily died by suicide. He described the writing as therapeutic and said he hoped Emily's family would read it. Despite her family's conviction that Emily Noble was murdered and her death certificate listing homicide by manual strangulation, no one has been convicted. The case highlights broader issues. What happens when forensic experts disagree and initial investigations are compromised? Did these failures deny justice or prevent a wrongful conviction? The jury swiftly acquitted the distraught husband, having considered his distress, Emily's lifelong battle with depression, and conflicting expert testimony. The truth of what happened in the woods remains uncertain, suspended between 2 possibilities. What is certain is that Emily, a 52-year-old woman who spent her life overcoming tragedy, is gone.